is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Three Ma. I am John Kurtz. I've got Cole Manbeck with me here today. We are going to be making a toast the entire show to the newest Wildcat, Dylan Edwards, who has committed to K-State. Very quick entry into the transfer portal. And he is a Cat. The prodigal son has come home, and it makes this offense very, very scary for 2024. And, you know, if we're making toasts, you better raise your glass of Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon or 360 Vodka from our good friends at Holiday Distillery. I know they did a great job hosting everybody at KCSN for the draft this past weekend, which looked like an awesome time. And, certainly they've helped out with our tailgates before. They're great K-State folks who support the pod, so make sure you support them. Go out and get that Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. I know we've got a ton of bourbon drinkers out there. Go get it. It's great stuff. I'm trying to remember what I was looking at. I just saw something on Twitter today that was somebody else, totally unrelated, not in the KCSN universe at all, talking about how great, it was an Instagram influencer, actually, is what it was, how great the Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon was. So people, I'm telling you, it's not just us. Go out and get it. All right, Dylan Edwards is a Cat. Very excited about this. Man, I mean, things seem to be trending in the right direction on the football front in a number of ways, but we know that Dylan Edwards has decided to come play with Avery Johnson. And, man, start thinking about this offense that K-State is going to have next year between Avery Johnson at quarterback, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards, Jace Brown at receiver, Garrett Oakley at tight end, some of the depth at receiver, Dante Cephas, Keegan Johnson. This offense is going to have a lot of weapons to play with. They have ultimately done a very good job in getting Avery Johnson a lot of help to work with on the offense this year. And, there's just no reason not to be absolutely thrilled about being able to add a guy with the game-breaking ability that Dylan Edwards has to the offense.
Just a monstrous addition, John. One of the fastest players in college football. This is a guy that won the Under Armour All-American Game Fastest Man competition. He ran a 4.41 laser time 40-yard dash. He's been timed in other laser time 40s, reportedly. Kansas pregame mentioned when he was coming into college in a high school meet that he ran a laser time 4.35 40. He's been clocked also at a 4.38. And just to put that into perspective, even at a 4.38 40, that would rank in the top 25 of the NFL Combine this last year overall in terms of fastest 40 times. So he is dynamic. He is a burner. He's going to bring a whole new level of explosiveness to this offense. And it's just a perfect complement to what DJ Giddens brings to the table. One of the better running backs in college football, one of the best running backs in the Big 12. Giddens, as we all know, rushed for over 1,200 yards on 223 carries last year, 5.5 yards per carry, 10 TDs, also 323 yards receiving on 29 receptions, 3 touchdowns there through the air. A complete back in Giddens himself, but he's more of your workhorse, your thoroughbred up the middle. He's going to break tackles. He's going to wear a defense down. And then you bring in Dylan Edwards. You'll probably have him on the field a lot at the same time. You'll be able to motion one or the other out of the backfield aside Avery Johnson. You'll be able to run one right up the middle. You'll be able to get him on the edge. Think about the read option with Avery Johnson lined up and split back sets with DJ Giddens on one side, opposite of him, Dylan Edwards on the other. And then you got the weapons on the outside and Jace Brown, Keegan Johnson, Garrett Oakley at tight end, etc. It just makes this offense so much more incredibly challenging to defend. Just the speed, and we haven't even talked about special teams and what he could bring to the table there, because punt return, kick return, K-State did not get anything from those levels last year, those aspects of football. They did not get the special teams, big plays, and I think they're going to have some opportunities now with Dylan Edwards back there, potentially, if they choose to utilize him in those areas of the game as well. So, gigantic addition, and somebody that K-State prioritized as soon as he entered the portal.
I just thought about this. Why are we even here doing this show right now? Why don't we just go pull up the show, the Dylan Edwards commitment show from whenever that was, way back when? Like we did this once. We kind of did it again the other day. It's been quite the saga. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't think you can underscore, since we're basically starting off here on the, what this does for the offense sort of a standpoint. I don't think you can really undersell what it does for the offense to have this kind of home run ability. Like, I can remember thinking, well, we had that moment in the portal where it was like, first go around to the transfer portal. Yes, they got Dante Cephas. I think we're excited about him. But there were some other bigger name receivers that they were chasing for a minute there. and we were disappointed that it didn't come through, that you landed a little bit more firepower on the offensive side of the ball, and thinking like, okay, now you are handing this over to a new offensive coordinator / co-offensive coordinator who's totally new to the program. Like, you got a lot of change there. Did they equip Avery with enough in terms of the weapons? I don't know. It's crazy. I realize this is just one piece, but it feels to me like it makes such a massive difference to have another guy who can just hit the home run ball so easily like this. Like, Jace Brown is kind of that guy. Dylan Edwards is absolutely that guy. I think it's going to open up so much else of the offense, so many other parts of the offense. And like DY, who I couldn't be on the show here, I know made this point almost immediately, like, hey, this will very much benefit guys like Keegan Johnson, guys like Dante Cephas, guys like Garrett Oakley, who are not going to be one of the top 2 players that defenses are really paying mind to, or top 3, I suppose, depending on if you want to go down to Jace. Like, the other guys are going to really benefit from all the attention that's going to have to be paid to Dylan Edwards, Jace Brown, and then even DJ Giddens, who had 300-plus receiving yards out of the backfield last year. So it could really do a lot to unlock the offense. Just having a guy that the defense always has to worry about, like, we can't let him get in space, we can't let him get behind us. That was kind of what K-State was doing with Deuce Vaughn for so long on offense, and what opened things up for, like, Malik Knowles, but even like Cade Warner. Cade Warner has a career year in part because of all the money the defenses are having to pay to Deuce Vaughn out of the backfield when he was there for K-State a couple of years ago. So I just think there are so many ways that you can look at how this benefits the overall picture of what they're trying to do.
When we went through the winter transfer portal window, we thought they wanted to add 2 wide receivers. They ended up adding Cephas, as you mentioned, John, a guy with over 2,300 career receiving yards. And then they hit pause, and they didn't add another one. But they were looking at some slot guys, like a Mikey Matthews for Utah, and I can't remember even where Matthews ended up, maybe Boise State or one of the Arizona schools. I can't recall exactly. But he was a dynamic slot guy. Okay, yeah, you can pull him up. He was a former 4-star receiver, had a nice freshman year at Utah. They were looking at guys like him in the slot, right? Well, you essentially just accomplished that with an all-around, all-purpose running back in Dylan Edwards, a smaller guy, 5'8", 5'9", but a guy that you can motion out. And he wants to be a complete back. He doesn't want to just be lining up at wide receiver. And I know Kansas State doesn't have the intention of just doing that with him, but he's a guy you can motion out in the slot 20, 30% of the time. He could be a slot weapon for you, get him out in space in the receiving game. And you just mentioned it, John. I mean, DJ Giddens has averaged over 11 yards a catch in his 2 years on 37 receptions, over 400 yards receiving. He's got great hands, too. I mean, even when you've got both of those guys in the backfield, you don't know who they're going to throw it to. They could motion either one of them out. They could motion both of them out and both put them, out wide on the boundaries. So, you can do a lot of different creative things. I'm sure Matt Wells, quarterback coach, co-offense coordinator, along with Connor Riley, I'm sure those two are pretty eager to scheme some things up here with what they can do and the creativity. It's going to add so much stress on defenders. Like, you think about those edge defenders now. Like, you're a defensive end and you're that outside backer lining up against K-State's offense, and you got Avery Johnson's speed on there at the field at quarterback taking the snap. You got Dylan Edwards' speed as alongside him, and you got DJ Giddens' power, and he can move. I mean, let's be honest, DJ Giddens can run. He's got some speed too, but he's more of a workhorse. You got those two. Like, how do you just have to respect so many different things of what they could do there. I mean, he could pull the ball out. He could run it. Avery could pull the ball out. He could pass it. They could do a pop pass to one of those two. There's just so many different things that they can do with this offense. It's going to be a ton of fun to think about over the ensuing months.
You want to take a final guess on Mikey Matthews?
Arizona.
No, he's actually a Cal Golden Bear.
Oh, man. All right. Well, stay in the... I was going to say Pac-12, but that's no longer a thing.
Yeah, said you go to a worse program and play in the ACC as opposed to Utah and play in the Big 12. I don't know. Hey,
and that was just that was just an example of somebody we knew that they had recruited at some point and ended up not getting in the portal as a slot guy. But yeah, it's and Dylan Edwards talked about this spring at Colorado, and the running backs coach at Colorado and the coaching staff, they talked about how they were going to utilize him more in the passing game. In fact, this is a quote from Dylan Edwards on April 9th after a spring practice where he said, quote, "It's crazy because this year I'm playing way more receiver. I'm more dynamic in our offense. It's not just running back. I'm in the running back room, but I view myself as not a running back or a receiver. I'm just an all-around threat toward the defense. I feel like I can split out. I can motion. I can do it all." So certainly sounds like a guy that also is willing to do that, right? Like he's not somebody that's like, no, I just want to be in the backfield. I just want to be a pure running back. Now, he's willing to do what it takes to make those home run type plays, and he's just going to put a lot of fear into defensive eyes and defensive coordinators' eyes this year.
He is, man. I mean, that's music to my ears to hear that from him. Now, you're right. There were quotes like that coming out of spring, and like Colorado seemingly was going to rely on him quite a bit. And some of the initial reaction that I've seen to the news and the move for Dylan Edwards here has been, Colorado fans like pointing to that October 12th date on the calendar when K-State's going to be in Boulder. That just got a lot more interesting, Coach Prime and company. I think K-State fans, I feel like the general vibe of a lot of the fan base would be to not be a huge Deion fan anyway. I kind of like the guy and want to root for him, but even at this point, I'm having to question a little bit the tactics and what's going on there at Colorado and how much you can really get done by having just this much turnover. But now Colorado's going to feel like this game is personal. You may have just amped up what kind of effort you're going to get from Colorado on October 12th. Cole seemed very unbothered by this. For our podcast-only listeners here, Cole is like almost like shaking me off as I'm bringing up this point about the October 12th. Cole, you stand a much greater chance of getting hit with a piss balloon in Boulder now than you did before. I'll tell you that much.
Look, I might create some enemies here, but if I was a Colorado fan, I wouldn't want to be circling that game because K-State's going to blow the doors off of Colorado and Boulder. So you can circle that right now. If you recall last year, John, on the show we did before the season, I said that K-State was going to blow the doors off of TCU when they came to Manhattan, and K-State indeed did that, winning 41-3. I thought TCU was a fraud. I think what Deion and Colorado is doing, I think it's fraudulent as well. I think by the time K-State rolls in there, that defense for Colorado, they'll have no idea what the hell they're doing. There's no chance in hell they're going to hold K-State to under 45 points in that game. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that. If I'm a Colorado fan, I'm thinking probably I'm not too excited about that matchup coming your way.
Cole, let me remind you of two things about the last time that I was in Boulder for a football game. I've been to Boulder many times because I enjoy Boulder quite a bit. But last time I was there for a football game, the last time K-State was there, they did lose in 2010, okay? I was there for student radio, and they make you take, for student radio, we had to drive a university vehicle. So it's not like purple with logo, but it's plain white, and then it has like the university seal kind of logo, like not, gaudy power cap, but it's like Kansas State University kind of thing on the side of the vehicle, right? So we park it. I can't remember if they give us media parking or what it was. We parked it wherever we parked. We go into the game. K-State loses. I'm trying to remember exactly how that went. It was pretty back and forth. I think Carson Coppin was playing quarterback. It was fairly offensive kind of a game. K-State loses a close game. And then we come back out to the car, and we get ready to leave, and I put it in reverse, and we reverse out, and I just hear psh, 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 psh. And I was like, what the hell? And we get out and look, and they had placed empty beer bottles under all the tires. And so, we backed out, and they all busted up on the tires. Now, thankfully, somehow we didn't wind up with a flat out of that, and it was okay. But I just want to remind you that K-State lost the last time they were there, Cole, and I want to remind you of what you're dealing with here and who you're poking in Colorado fans who have a renewed sense of energy here. I mean, that was like Dan Hawkins, Colorado. I don't know how you could have much bravado when Dan Hawkins was your head coach, but now they're coach primed up here. So I'm just trying to caution you on what you may be getting yourself into.
All right. I appreciate the reminder. I'll make sure that we're pretty careful when we make the trip out there to Boulder, because I plan to make the trip this year, and I assume you're going to be out there. So I think it's going to be a popular game for attendance. It'll be very curious to see how many K-State fans make that trip, as they've missed the trip to Boulder. I love Boulder. I love going out to Boulder. But I have been safely in the press box every time I have been there. I have not had to sit in the stands. So
that's also kind of what I'm saying, Cole. Like, you haven't had to go out and do this, so maybe now, okay. All right, let's look through Colorado's schedule here, because that could be a game where K-State has a ton of fans in the stands. We've seen what Nebraska has done every time they played there. North Dakota State, first game of the year. I mean, that could be an L. At Nebraska, I don't know, did you see Dylan Raiola at the Nebraska spring game this weekend? He was slinging it all over the yard. Huskers, they could win that game.
How about Nebraska, John? I thought they thought they were getting Dylan Edwards. Why didn't he go there?
Well, you better talk to your boy Steve Wiltfong about that. I mean, my God, all the Nebraska fluff pieces and like, oh, they're going to throw a ton of money and be a factor. Yeah, none of that. At Colorado State, look, I don't know a thing about Colorado State, but they did damn near beat them last year. They got Baylor at home. At UCF, that's certainly losable. I mean, look, Colorado could be like 2-3, and they could already have some of this come out of them by the time that game comes around. So we'll see. We'll see. Cole will probably be in Boulder wearing home field apparel, I would have to imagine. Homefieldapparel.com is where he procured it. That's where you can get it as well. And use promo code 3MON23 for 15% off your first order. It is the best college gear around. Old school K-State stuff, the old Copper Bowl shirt, if you want to rock that. If you want an old Big 8 Champs basketball shirt, you can get that too at homefieldapparel.com. Get the shooting shirt. It looks awesome as well. The hoodies that you always see me wearing, homefieldapparel.com, people. 3MON23 for 15% off your first order, and we are back in just a moment.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
I'm really good. Cole, did I take out the right person there? Was it Wiltfong? Now I'm second-guessing myself.
Yeah.
Which On3 guy it was. Okay.
Yeah, it was. It's a good thing DY is not on. We would have put him in a real precarious position there as a colleague. So hopefully, we know he won't listen to this because he doesn't listen to us, so we don't have to worry about him ever hearing that.
True. That's true. Very, very true. Okay, so Dylan Edwards is back. The offense is going to be great. What are reasonable expectations, I suppose, for Dylan Edwards here in year one? Like what? I also, another point that I kind of want to make with all this is like, I know there's so much hoopla for Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards, but DJ Giddens also is a hell of a back, and this could really help him out too. I mean, let's not forget about what DJ brings to the table. But Dylan Edwards had a little over 600 total yards and 6 touchdowns last year. 4 of those came in the opening game against TCU. So what does a successful season look like for Dylan Edwards in year one at K-State?
And that is a great question. He had 36 receptions for 299 last year in Colorado, with 135 of those coming in the opening game against TCU when he was dynamic and had 3 touchdowns. And then he had 321 yards rushing, which again led Colorado in rushing yards. And I do think it is important to remember that when we talk about, more than 600 all-purpose yards, I said this when Dylan Edwards entered the portal on our show, but that Colorado team, that offensive line was brutal. They were dead last in the FBS as a team in yards per carry at 2.3 yards per rush. They were 124th out of 133 FBS teams in sack percentage allowed. Dylan Edwards set the school record for receiving yards and receiving touchdowns in a game by a running back in that opener against TCU. He finished 4th on the team in both receptions and receiving yards. So, when I think about what he does at K-State, like I think about Trayshawn Ward last year, I start to wonder to myself, and maybe I'll ask you this question. I'll throw it back to you first, John. Are they better this year than they were last year running back with a proven guy like Trayshawn Ward, who had a lot of success at Florida State that came in, and then you got DJ Giddens last year?
I would just spin it this way. I like what they have this year. I would take what they have this year more so than last year. Like, yes, is there a lower floor potentially here? Probably. But Trayshawn Ward he had a much more limited ceiling because he just didn't have the game-breaking speed that, the breakaway sort of speed that a Dylan Edwards had. Now, Trayshawn Ward had some huge plays. They probably don't win the Kansas game without Trayshawn Ward, for instance, the huge run that he broke off at a time when they really, really needed it. So I don't mean that to run down the guy at all, but this is just a much, much higher ceiling play. And when you have a more experienced now DJ Giddens, and, they still have, we should also include here Joe Jackson, another year earlier, or another year more experienced. They probably feel better about what they would get out of Joe Jackson throwing him into the fold this year than they would last year. And it looked like for a minute that may be just what they roll with out there on the field, and we were kind of readying ourselves for that. I guess I'll have to say I would give the edge to this year because I think it just gives you so much more upside, so much more versatility with everything that you have there, even though Trayshawn Ward was a guy that we were very excited about, was a really nice pickup in the portal, and I think still played a very nice role for the team last year.
I mean, he absolutely did. He still averaged over 5 yards per carry. He was effective for this team, but what you brought up, I mean, like you mentioned the run against KU, right? Well, he got ran down at like the 30-yard line. If it's Dylan Edwards, that's a touchdown. There were multiple plays last year where Trayshawn Ward broke out in the open field, and he made it a big play, but it's probably a touchdown if it's Dylan Edwards. He's going to end up housing it. And the other thing I think is important to remember, like we just talked about how great DJ Giddens is, and he is. In 2 years, he's rushed for 1,744 yards. As a redshirt freshman, he had 5.8 yards per carry last year, 5.5 yards per carry, 1,226 yards rushing last year. And we're talking about a guy with 312 carries in his career at over 1,700 rushing yards. He's been tremendous. And he can move, all right? Like, I don't want it to paint a picture like DJ Giddens is slow by any means. I think DJ Giddens is an NFL running back. But his longest run in his career is 49 yards, all right? Dylan Edwards can bust those. He can bust 60, 70-yarders when you need a big play, when you're struggling in a game. He can break it open, and he can turn what is a 5-10-yard gain. We saw it for Colorado last year in that opening game against TCU. He turned a screen pass into a 75-yard, 80-yard touchdown early in that game. And so he's just got that game-breaking speed that's a difference maker for this team. So, like, when I think about what he, numbers-wise, what they would do, I think Giddens could still be right around 1,100, 1,200. And I think Dylan Edwards, because I think they're going to use him in multifaceted ways. I think it would be fair to estimate 550, 600 rushing yards for him and maybe 350, 400 receiving yards is maybe where I would have him. I don't know.
That's what I would have said, like 8 to 900 total yards. And like, I don't know if he could hit the 6 touchdown total again this year, a little more spread out. Probably not going to have 4 in one game. TCU defense, good Lord. 8 to 900 total yards, 6 touchdowns.
And the reason I didn't even go higher, John, is because part of the advantage with Dylan Edwards is just the threat of him on the field, right? So like him not touching the football, he is still doing something for you because he's going to have the eyes of defenders and defensive coordinators that you've got more weapons, arguably, and that's another discussion we can have with DY, probably more weapons now, at least since 2014. And I know we talked about this the other day, maybe even back to 2012, in terms of skill set, talent that you've got at wide receiver, et cetera. But Jace Brown on the outside, if Keegan Johnson is healthy, again, we talked about last year, before the season, they were talking about Keegan Johnson being the best wide receiver they'd had since Tyler Lockett in 2014. He was banged up all last year. So it's a big if. But if he is healthy and he returns to the form that they have seen in spring ball last year and this year, and Jace Brown, who looks like a budding star at wide receiver and had one of the best freshman seasons in K-State history as a wide receiver. And then Garrett Oakley, a talented tight end and a talented quarterback. And you got Dante Cephas and Trey Spivey and some of these other weapons that you can go to that have high upside in this offense. The question comes down to the offensive line. Obviously, we know they want another offensive line, and that could be another discussion we'll have, as we know they're targeting some guys there, and Chamblee from Arkansas is a guy they covet. But the offensive line will be a question mark. But they're going to be able to spread the ball around to quite a bit of guys. So Dylan Edwards, 800, 900 yards, that's still a hell of a year for a true sophomore running back. And then he may be the guy that takes the reins the following year after that with 3 years of eligibility left in his career currently, because DJ Giddens could go pro.
Yeah, that's another element of this we haven't even really talked about. Yeah, I mean, the future, everyone thinking about this year and just loading up right now, we have Avery Johnson. Well, that obviously that trend could continue on into the future. And yeah, I mean, I would assume that DJ Giddens is going to be gone if things go the way that they should this year, the way that we assume that they will. Last point I want to kind of make on this for right now is that this is a big win. Like, I know that Dylan Edwards, there's a lot built in here that was advantageous to K-State, being that his dad played for Snyder, being that he was a childhood friend of Avery Johnson, being that he committed here at one point in time. There are obviously a lot of deeply ingrained relationships already there. But like, you think about what's happening with football, we haven't talked about the linebacker situation right now, but that seems to be trending in the right direction. We know that K-State's got their NIL much more in order now. They didn't suffer like huge transfer portal losses here in this spring season where everybody figured that might be coming. And now you're getting one of the biggest offensive weapons that was in the portal this spring cycle period. And, Dylan Edwards mentioned Georgia, but like Ole Miss, Nebraska, Texas A&M seem to be like actual real legitimate interested players here. Obviously Kansas too. And you locked it down with relative ease here. It looks like you may be on the cusp of landing a very talented linebacker. And this, like a week ago, it felt like things were really stale and just like we're kind of like, basketball recruiting is really fun now. What's happening with football? This feels like there's been a real shot of life and a real shot of enthusiasm and positive momentum coming through the football program here in the last week or so. And that to me makes me very optimistic when it felt like, hey, if they do the right things here in the portal, like this team very, very well could be a Big 12 championship team.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when Dylan Edwards entered the portal not the second time, but entered the portal here a few days ago, they thought this would be a drawn-out process, right? That he would probably go visit multiple schools. There'd be a lot of attention on his recruitment in the portal. And then we got a sense that this thing could move really quickly later in the week. And I think it really says something about Dylan Edwards and his desire to be at Kansas State when he entered the portal. The fact that, I think it was Wednesday when he entered. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. I think he entered on Wednesday, and he was at Kansas State starting his official visit on Friday. And they locked him down without him taking any visits, any other schools. Nebraska was rumored to be really in on him. They really wanted him. They were going to be able to throw a lot at him. And he didn't even take a visit to Lincoln. K-State secured his services before he left Manhattan this weekend and beat out some really high-profile schools. I think that speaks volumes for Dylan Edwards' desire to be at Kansas State. I think it also speaks volumes to how badly Kansas State coveted Dylan Edwards once he did enter the portal. Chris Kleiman outreached to him personally soon after he entered the portal. They wanted him badly. They saw the difference maker that he could be for this team. He's really the dream get for this offense. You think about it and what he can add another dimension to it, as we talked about earlier in the show. So significant recruiting win. And now you look back at that 2023 recruiting class that was one of the best classes in the history of the state of Kansas. With so much top-end talent. K-State's got the number 1 and number 2 players in that class, and Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards now on the roster. They've got 6 of the top 11 players in that 23 class in the On3 industry consensus rankings for the state of Kansas on this K-State roster. And you got an all-Kansas backfield and quarterback, trio, right? Avery Johnson, obviously from Wichita, Dylan Edwards from Wichita, and DJ Giddens from Junction City. Really cool story. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's just a significant, I can't state enough and emphasize enough how big of a recruiting win this is with some of the opportunities that Dylan Edwards would have had if he would have played this thing out longer.
Well, so now I get, is it worth talking about Devon Booth and what he does here? I mean, is there still, what do we think of that? Because he cut Oklahoma State and it seemed like K-State and Utah was going to be the choice there.
I think it would probably just assume the talented Utah State transfer running back who had a lot of interest in K-State and was visiting. His visit ended right before Dylan Edwards arrived in Manhattan. I think we can probably just assume he's going to likely end up at Utah at this point. I would not think he's a take for K-State because then you risk losing a guy like a Joe Jackson, right? You don't want to lose, like, you just got the depth of the running back room that you want, and you don't want to damage that. Now you have just an ideal running back room because you got DJ Giddens, and then you got Dylan Edwards, more of a proven guy, and then Joe Jackson is a redshirt freshman behind him. And again, let's just say if DJ Giddens goes pro after this year, has a great year, ends up going to the draft and gets drafted, well, then Joe Jackson can be, as a sophomore, that second guy behind Dylan Edwards. And Dylan Edwards isn't a guy that you're going to run up the middle 20 times, so Joe Jackson will have an opportunity that you can sell to him. And so you've got a real nice 3 deep here. I might even be forgetting another running back, John. Is there somebody else on the? I mean, JB Price, a KC kid, he'll be on the roster as a true freshman. He's not got a Hill redshirt.
I think after that, you're down to like James White, right?
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking I was forgetting someone, but yeah, that has to be it. So
now you have me paranoid about it.
I would think to forget somebody.
Your point is made on that. Your point is made on that for sure. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like K-State, if Dylan Edwards didn't work out, they probably could have had Booth as well. Like very, very positive recruiting momentum coming right now. And then the big one that we've been talking about, obviously, is Elijah Herring, the linebacker transfer from Tennessee, who, ironically, Cole, when we speak about Colorado, if you have anything else you'd like to say about Colorado here, that is the primary competition for Elijah Herring, who we feel like would be a huge missing piece now without Jay Clifton in the middle of the defensive linebacker. So do you have a message you'd like to deliver here to Elijah Herring as he contemplates K-State and Colorado and where it is that he'd like to play college football next year?
Well, I mean, you either want to play for a 2-win, 3-win team, or you want to play for the Big 12 champs. So you want to play in the college football playoff potentially? Because if you're the Big 12 champs, you play in the college football playoff. So message is pretty simple. And plus, Elijah Herring visited Colorado. He visited K-State. I think he probably senses the differences in culture. And I feel pretty good about where K-State sits in that recruitment. 6'3", 230-pound middle linebacker that is really just the ideal get for what K-State wants there. Austin Romaine, obviously a talented sophomore linebacker coming in, but you need a second guy. And Elijah Herring can be a guy that steps right in and starts there. He led Tennessee in tackles last year with 80 tackles as a sophomore. He'll be a junior this next year. Tennessee native, went to the Vols out of high school and has been there for a couple of years. Would be a huge get for Kansas State. I was going through it beforehand, John, before we did the show, and I believe he is the second-ranked linebacker to enter the portal in the spring window, according to the On3 rankings. It looks like he's the 11th overall linebacker to enter the portal overall, but that includes the winter window and spring window. Looks to me like he is the second best, if I'm reading it right, linebacker to enter in the spring. So the fact that K-State got him on a visit with so many schools after him, and they feel pretty darn good about where they sit there potentially, that would be a gigantic get for this defense, as well as they secure his services potentially, and then hopefully land a nose tackle for depth, get another quarterback potentially, and some of the other needs checked off the boxes in order to accomplish what they want this year.
You trying to tell me there's a culture difference between K-State and Colorado?
Just a smidge, just a little one. So,
Devon Rice would be maybe the only other thing we'd want to mention at running back.
Wow,
who was
that's
another.
See, I knew we were
home run hitter.
I knew we were forgetting somebody, John, because Devon Rice was the buzz in spring ball at different points. DY's high on him, and we called him a diet. Ironically, DY I think called him a diet Dylan Edwards when they signed him. Big play capability out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. Just another weapon that you can be creative with. But now you have the opportunity, if you want, to probably redshirt him, assuming everybody's healthy, or you can get creative and still get him on the field as well.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of when they had Keon Mosey and Deuce Vaughn both out there very early in their careers. A couple guys with similar skill sets, and they were using them both. They used them both. They got Keon Mosey out.
I got to ask you, John, before we do wrap, because this goes in line with my question to you about Trayshawn Ward and DJ Giddens as a duo. And obviously now we've seen what DJ Giddens can do after another season and the success he had. How does this backfield as a 1-2 punch compare from your recollection and memory to past K-State backfields? Have they had a 1-2 punch like this? And when would you go back to?
I don't know. Darren Sproles overlapped with Josh Scobie for a year.
Okay. Is that the year he broke his collarbone? Darren Sproles?
Did he break his collarbone in 2001, the first year that he played?
Yeah, I thought as a true freshman, didn't he break it? I don't know, maybe don't quote me to that, or hold me to that, but I thought he did.
That might be right. He played some in 2001, and that's when Scobie was maybe the best back in the Big 12. So that's one that comes to mind. Oh, Daniel Thomas was playing with William Powell, who also wound up in the NFL for a while. I mean, that was a pretty good backfield.
That's right. That's a great comp. William Powell should have got more touches.
Yeah, I probably should have. I'm trying, Bryce Brown played with John Hubert,
Well, from a pure talent perspective, you could make the case for that, certainly in 2011.
God, I wish I could remember the other running back that they were using a lot with this. It was who else was? Damn it, my joke is going to fall on deaf ears here. I was going to say, oh my God, good old Charles Jones in 2014 with whoever else that they were trying to feed in 2014.
DeMarcus Robinson. What's the other running back? Yeah.
Devontae Robinson and Carlos Jones at Torrey.
Well, I was also trying to think of what year was it that Daniel Davis came in, the junior college back, and wasn't he a 5-star recruit, and wasn't he with Sproles like 03?
Yeah, I think it was 2002. I think it was 2002. Yeah. But Daniel Davis didn't do a thing.
I know. I'm like looking ahead to we thought Daniel Davis could be really good. Jogging back the memory banks. I apologize if this is annoying for our listeners to listen to. It's sometimes fun to jog the memory banks with John because, we were diehards back then, as so many of you are, I'm sure. And, these comps are hard to do. But from a pure talent perspective, there's probably only 3 or 4 backfields in this century for K-State football that would match this one.
Who else were they handing the ball off to in 2000 besides Scobie? I was trying to think of that. Oh, okay. Well, they had Scobie and David Allen and Rock Cartwright. I mean, between Cartwright then at fullback, that was pretty damn good too. So that honestly, I feel like that's kind of, they had different. David Allen was your quick, shifty return guy. Josh Scobie, kind of more of a power back. Rock Cartwright, definite battering ram there. They had a lot of different ways that they could beat you at running back. So, I don't know. I think there's some kind of comparison in that.
Yeah.
Fun discussion. You can have more of it on our Discord. It is patreon.com/3ma to join the Patreon, which then gives you access to the Discord, basically our big group chat, which gives you up-to-the-date info as it is coming in, plus just a lot of really fun combos, like that type of deal that we can have on there. So make sure that you sign up, patreon.com/3ma, just $5 a month to get extra content from us as well. We'll throw extra audio content up there. Cole has a new big board up there. He had a big write-up on Bay Fall, who is one of the new commits in K-State basketball. So there's a lot for you to find at patreon.com/3ma if you want more 3ma content.
John, I got to say, my last 2 big board write-ups that I've done there has been a commitment from the top guy on the big board each time within 12 hours after the fact. The top guy on the big board, CJ Jones, he was on the top of the April 13th one. He committed the next day. Bay Fall, we did a separate write-up on him that posted on Saturday, and then had him at the top of the big board trending up with a write-up on him, and he committed on Saturday evening, former McDonald's All-American. And there's a second guy at the top of that big board that you might keep an eye on. So stay attuned to that one as well. Big write-ups on several guys K-State is chasing, and you can go view that written content at patreon.com/3ma. Pretty detailed write-ups on the guys that K-State is after. And the portal also broke down where the roster kind of stands. It's a fluid situation, obviously. So we'll have to continue to update that, but it's a very active place with a lot of discussion on our Discord channel as well.
Indeed it is. All right. Check it out, people. We appreciate our friends at Holiday Distillery. Thank you to Home Field Apparel. And thank you to Nick Springer behind the scenes. For Cole Manbeck, I am John Kurtz. Appreciate you listening to another edition of 3Ma. We will talk to you soon.